Week 18 is here, the final week of the 2024 NFL regular season, and not a ton on the line from a playoff perspective, but still some pretty fun DFS plays, I think, across this Week 18 NFL DFS main slate. For today, we're going to dive in and let you know who actually cares about this week, let you know how much that matters by looking back at past trends and past perfect lineups, and then dive in and let you know our top picks by position on FanDuel for this week. Welcome on into the Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as I am every week by Brandon Gdula. You can find his work on Twitter or X at Gdula13. He is on Blue Sky at Gdula as well. You can find his work over at FanDuel Research, where he is a senior managing editor. Brandon, we are on to 2025. We are on to Week 18. How you doing today?
Yes, happy new year. Doing good. We got some teams with motivation, a couple at least. Playoff race has been kind of a dud.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. Got some teams resting. I know it's going to be like a big incentive week that people talk about. I'm kind of half in, half out on the incentive stuff. I feel like it works or it doesn't. And then I don't know. But yeah, we got some potential value plays we'll have to sift through. It's going to be one of those weeks, though, where you got to stay tuned to the news and see what the reports are.
My favorite thing is the two incentives that I've seen floating around are Courtland Sutton needs like 62 yards for a bonus, and then Mike Evans his 1,000-yard streak. But both those guys are in must-win games, and their teams, I guarantee you, will not care about that. They're going to try to win the football game first. If they can get Mike Evans his 1,000 yards later, like sick, they'll do that. But like, it just all comes down to playoffs first, above all else. And I think that both Evans and Sutton are in good spots despite that. But like, the incentives are not the reason to target those guys for sure. So maybe a bit of a quiet week on that front as well. Today, we're going to dive into which teams are pushing, which teams are sitting guys, whether they should target backups on those teams that are sitting their players and things like that. Then we'll dive into game stacks for the Vikings and Lions game. Also talking about some Falcons and Buccaneers. They've got high totals this week and are going to gun for the playoffs. Then we'll dive into our position picks for this week to get you ready for NFL Week 18. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to the FanDuel Research Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts, because not only are we live with the NFL show throughout the entire playoffs, but also PGA is back in our lives on Tuesday next week. I do not. Oh, it's the Sony Open. I lied. I was going to say I don't know what the tournament is, but I do. It's Sony Open next week. We're going to be live on Tuesday. Not live. I lied about that. We'll be recording on Tuesday to get you set for the Sony Open, talking best bets and DFS plays for PGA every Tuesday. We're going through that here on the FanDuel Research Podcast feed. So instead of one show per week, two per week, beginning next week with the Sony Open. They'll be on Thursdays for the playoff preview shows. It'll be 10 a.m. Eastern on the FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page. So go subscribe there. Turn on notifications so you get notified as we go live every Thursday. And then also check out the Covering the Spread shows over there. And of course, you get the PGA and NFL DFS shows. Subscribe to the FanDuel Research Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action of FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. Not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, and so much more. This way, you'll be all set for the biggest games of the year. Make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat Connecticut. Visit MD Gambling Health Oregon, Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Brandon, as always, let's begin things here with our slate overview for Week 18. What to you is a key thing to know, a key thing you're asking yourself or thinking about as you fill out your lineups for Week 18?
Yeah, so I was going to come in here and kind of say I didn't really think about too much. But as we were talking in the seconds before we went live, I kind of, figured out what I wanted to say here. And it's probably what we typically say week 18 every year, where you're going to have to react to the news, right? Certain teams are going to rest starters, certain teams have motivation, certain teams could be scoreboard watching. We're going to hear reports of, third, fourth string players who should have elevated roles. So you do need to react, right? But you also don't want to overreact. I think that's going to be a key this week. There are going to be, look, I pulled a lot of optimizers in the lineups, and there's a lot of pure value plays with a 4 to start their salaries that are popping up. And I'm not saying that they're all bad plays, nothing like that.
Yeah.
However, it's really easy by Sunday morning to sort of plug in multiple guys you don't really know a lot about necessarily, just to get to other players. And I think we need to make sure we're reacting to the right news and maybe not overreacting to the point where you take the players you really like and then by lock, you don't really have as many because you're trying to get in all these values and react to like the breaking news. So I would say react, but don't overreact this week.
I think that's good advice always, frankly. React, but don't overreact. Weigh in new information, but don't toss out all the research you've done. And frankly, I think for this week, which is reassuring to me, is we don't have to necessarily go nuts with value because a lot of the guys I like most don't have like massive salaries. Jahmyr Gibbs' salary this week is $8,800. That's like $500 to $600 lower than it should be. You got Bucky Irving, who I adore, $7,900. You've got some other guys who are at least considerations. Cortland Sutton's salary this week is $7,300. That's pretty low. You got Jameson Williams. You got Jalen McMillan. A lot of guys. Jordan Addison, 71. A lot of guys I love who have motivation to win don't come with like, salary busting salaries. That's not a weird way to phrase that. They're not going to break your cap.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. They're not going to break the cap by putting them in your lineup. So I don't feel the need to get too crazy, especially given that a lot of those, like you mentioned, the $4,000 plays, they're playing with bad quarterback play or backup offensive lines. That's the key thing for me. Like Blake Corum, I think the Rams probably going to play a lot of their offensive linemen because they can't have Kupp, Nakua, Stafford, Williams, and then their entire offensive line also inactive. They've got to have somebody active at some point. So, like, Blake Corum, sure, I can understand that one for sure. Michael Carter, like, they're going to have their offensive line out there most likely for the Cardinals. Like, I can understand some of them, but, like, if it's full backups, like bad situations on teams with super low implied totals, that's where we can be a bit more skeptical and say, okay, should I actually do this, or am I better off using these roster spots elsewhere and maybe living a bit more in the mid-range than I would otherwise?
Yeah, and I know where you're coming from. A lot of salaries that are reasonable. I'm gonna say there's a big, I guess I didn't count them. I'm gonna say there's a big 4 off the top of my head quarterbacks. Now do come with elevated salaries. I think there's a big 3 to me at running back with Jahmyr Gibbs and Bucky Irving ahead of Bijan Robinson, but I like Bijan a lot. You can kind of like say, okay, I want Jared Goff in this huge game. I want Gibbs, Bucky, Bijan. If you try to do that, you're going to need like a receiver who might be a 4th or 5th stringer, right? Like you might get into those situations, but I think that we're going to need to find some values. But I think overall, what we're trying to talk about here is A, discern the good value from the potentially bad value, but B, maybe the best way I could sum this up is make a list, right?
Yeah.
Make a list of the guys you want. You might really want to play Jameson Williams a ton, but because he's like at a $6,500 salary and you find, well, I just need to keep bumping down to guys like Marvin Mims or the Rams potential value receivers, right? And then you end up with no Jameson. Right. Now, that's the kind of stuff why I think you need to make a list this week and just stay organized.
Yeah. I like that, and I like that in general as well, not just for this week too. So a couple good points, both for week 18, but also in general. Now, throughout the show, we're going to talk a lot about week 18 and motivation and talk a lot about the playoff teams and teams with stuff on the line. So our one trend for the day, we're not going to do the two trends as we typically would do. We're going to do one trend, breaking down what's happened historically in past perfect lineups. I kind of identifying, okay, we care a lot about motivation, but how often does that matter for perfect lineups? So went back through past perfect lineups, and not every team's going to, be trying, got some backups out there. So I wanted to see how much does that matter for DFS? Should we focus on just those teams with high motivation, or how much does this change by position, stuff like that? We had 6 years of data on the final week, whether week 17 or 18, depending on the year, since FanDuel added a flex position back in 2018. Overall takeaway for me is that motivation does matter a decent amount, even if it's not everything, when trying to predict who will do well in a given week. Overall, 54 players or defense that have made a perfect lineup. Of those 54, 29, which is 54%, had something on the line, whether it was seeding or playoffs or a bye, stuff like that. 24 of them, or 44%, had what I would call high motivation to win. That means not just seeding. We're not talking just seeding there. We're talking also, buys, got to win for the playoffs and things like that. So basically half the plays had reasons for their teams to give it a full go in their final week. Running back was where motivation mattered the most. 8 out of 13 running backs in perfect lineups had high motivation to win. That's 61%. That is below 50% for all other positions. So motivation matters elsewhere. We should care most of motivation for running back, which is more reason to go with Bucky Irving, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, and guys like that. At quarterback, only 2 out of 6 had high motivation. 3 out of 6 had something on the line. We can be receptive to quarterbacks on dud teams as long as they've got good enough skill guys around them to have faith, and we can think they'll give it a full go in the game. At receiver, it was a mixed bag. 10 out of 22 had high motivation. 12 out of 22 had something to play for. So more than half had something on the line. Less than half had high motivation, but in line with the overall positions. We can probably treat receiver similarly to quarterback, where we care about motivation, but it's not the end-all be-all. 4 out of 6 defenses had something on the line, but only 2 out of 6 had high motivation. I'll care about it there as well, as long as it doesn't force me to break the bank, because I don't want to spend a lot of defense if it does get me into some high motivation spots. As far as this week's goes, here are the teams with high motivation. So fitting into we want these running backs bucket, and we should care about the quarterbacks, receivers, and tight ends, but it's not the end all be all. The high motivation teams are obviously the Lions and Vikings, but also the Broncos, Dolphins, Falcons, and Buccaneers are all teams that still need to win to ensure their playoff spots for all 4 of those teams. Teams that have already confirmed the rest starters are the Rams, going Jimmy Garoppolo, Chiefs with Carson Wentz, Eagles with either Kenny Pickett or Tanner McKee. Kind of hoping Tanner McKee plays because he looked kind of fun in limited action last week. And then the Bills are going to start Josh Allen to keep his streak intact, but then it'll be a handoff most likely, and then he'll sprint off the field for Mitch Trubisky to come in instead for the Bills. Teams that have seeding on the line, but nothing else. Teams that could play their guys or could scale things back include the Packers, the Commanders, and Chargers. The Chargers may not have motivation because if the Steelers win Saturday, the Chargers are locked into the 6th seed. So if the Steelers lose, Chargers have motivation to get the 5 seed and play Houston. If the Steelers win, then the Chargers have no motivation at all and could potentially rest Justin Herbert and others. Commanders, if they get the 6th seed, that means they play either the Bucks or the Rams instead of playing the Eagles for a third time. So I think the Commanders have decent motivation despite the fact they are playing for just seeding. The Texans have not said their plans yet, but betting markets seem to indicate the rest of their guys. CJ Stroud sounded like he's going to play on Monday, but the betting market seems to disagree thus far. So the list of teams with high motivation is not huge, but Brandon, is it big enough where you'll be comfortable building around guys on those teams, or do you need to be more receptive than usual to guys without motivation for this year?
So mostly the teams with high motivation that you rattled off, those 6 teams, the Lions, Vikings, Broncos, Dolphins, Falcons, and Bucks. It's not the top 6 in implied team total this week, but it's a lot of them.
Yeah.
And with a lot of low implied team totals bogging things down, you're kind of getting like a more separation than you might. So like a 28-point implied team total is almost always great, but a 28 point implied team total is like 7 points higher than the slate average because there are, let's see, 13 teams with implied team totals below 20 points. So like the separation here is obvious. It's not necessarily groundbreaking, like not to, undercut your trend here, right? Of like, it's not groundbreaking that these teams with more motivation should have higher implied team totals. They're playing better players, etc. It's a reminder of like, no, this does matter. And I know for a fact certain teams with motivation are going to not play to the level that we're expecting. There are going to be some value players or teams that, they're out of it, but they're going to play their starters and they're going to have some good games. But probability wise, the right play here is to lean on those 6 teams whenever you can. Don't force it. I kind of try to like build around a lineup with just those teams. It gets tricky.
Yeah.
Because the quarterbacks are almost all high salaried other than basically Michael Penix, who I'm receptive to, right?
Sure.
But you get Jahmyr Gibbs in there, Bijan, Bucky at running back. Like things get tight real fast. So to put a bow on this, yeah, I want teams with high motivation. I won't exclusively use teams with high motivation, but really only because I can't.
Yeah.
If I could and if I find a path, maybe, but I'm not sure that I can find that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Where you said lean into, I think that's the proper phrasing for it, where I want to lean into the guys with high motivation because in general, they are more likely to be there. It's more predictable outputs. Like, yeah, there have been a lot of guys who have had nothing on the line who have made perfect lineups, but could we have predicted that it would happen? Like, could I have predicted Carson Wentz would run for 160,000 yards last year in week 18? No. So like, can you predict where those guys will come from? That's tougher than saying like, okay, I think there'll be 4 guys with nothing on the line to make a perfect lineup this week. So I can predict where it'll come from those playoff teams. There are some value players on those teams like Joe McMillan, Sam Laporta's salary is pretty low, Jameson Williams. I think there's enough there. Now, I think at running back specifically, I'm going to have to budge a bit on my I want motivation, which is fine. Again, it's only 8 out of 13 had high motivation. It's not 100%. I will have to budge there, I think, because I think that's where I'm seeing some value I don't mind in Tony Pollard, Michael Carter, Blake Corum, guys like that, maybe Will Shipley. There's enough there where I can budge. And I think that's where I'm most willing to bend the knee a bit and capitulate and use some players in weird situations than I might be at some other spots, which is counterthetical to what we just said. But I do think it's proper when I weigh the situations for this week specifically.
Yeah, and I mean, like, if you could build a lineup around those 6 teams, you would, right? For the most part,
totally.
I mean, you just physically kind of can't unless you're playing subpar play. Like, I'm not playing Broncos running backs ever.
Oof.
I'm not like, so maybe just to clarify, like, we're not saying play like these teams heavily
right
without thinking about it. Like the market share stuff still matters. So
right.
The Broncos are going to be interesting. They're playing against some backups. They don't have the best market shares, but got an interesting quarterback, 1.5 receivers in play for them. But really, I mean, it's Lions Vikings that we want to build around, which is sick. But also like Miami's implied team total is not great. They're playing with their backup quarterback, like, presumably, right?
Yeah.
So you, again, react, but don't overreact.
Yep. I agree with all that. Now, you mentioned the Dolphins playing Steve Huntley. Let's start things there as we transition out of the injury discussion for this week. He's going to start for the Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa limited in practice twice. Mike McDaniel's already said he expects Huntley to start this game. How are you viewing the Dolphins against the Jets with Huntley starting for the second consecutive game?
I didn't like this team a ton to begin with. They're like, their market shares with Huntley haven't been bad. Tyreek Hill's got a 33% share in those games. Waddle 27% whenever he's like actually been on the field with good red zone roles. But this is like the first. We just talked up these teams with motivation, and now it's like, well, aside from Miami, kind of.
Right.
And
Right.
Denver's kind of lukewarm. But
Right.
who on this team, if anybody, do you feel like you could build around and feel really good?
Not a soul.
Yeah.
Not a single human being on that lineup.
It's
I don't want to, like, they're salaried as a Tua's playing and he's not. So like, I don't want to do that.
And like Huntley had a big game fantasy wise, last week with 7 carries, 52 yards and a score. Only 4 incompletions, right? But like, there's just not a. Would I be floored if he put up 20 again and like made the perfect lineup because other guys went off? Not really, but kind of. I mean, the Jets just looked abysmal last week. So again, I know how sort of hypocritical it sounds, but again, this is part of reacting, but not overreacting. This doesn't mean just plug in, the Dolphins over other potential options who might be eliminated already. So I want to be able to say that I like the Dolphins, but I kind of don't.
Yeah, Devon Achane in games without Tua is at 45 yards in scrimmage per game. Like, I'm good. I'll pass on that one.
Let's move on.
Okay. Cade Otton returned to a limited session for the Buccaneers on Thursday. He's missed the past 2 games with a knee injury and didn't practice on Wednesday. Talk about the Bucs in the bookmakers section. Darnell Mooney and Drake London both popped up on the injury report for the Falcons on Thursday. Shoulder for Mooney, knee for London. I don't know if this is rest or what, but usually they say rest and they didn't say rest there. I hope they didn't both get hurt in the same practice. That'd be weird. I think they'll be okay. It does make them worth monitoring. We'll talk about the Falcons in the bookmaker section too. As mentioned above, the Rams, Chiefs, Eagles, and Bills have all confirmed they will be resting players to the playoffs. This could lead to increased volume for guys like Blake Corum, Will Shipley, Ray Davis, and others. And all 4 backup quarterbacks at least have started previously in the NFL. They're backups for a reason, but they've been fine at times. Any players you're willing to take a swipe at here on those teams as things stand now?
I think those 3 backs you just mentioned are interesting.
Yeah.
Highest on Corum, 3rd round pick. They probably want to see what he can do because he did not get much run. I mean, maybe they know that he's got his limitations and that's why he didn't eat into the role of Kyron Williams more this year, but I feel best about Corum. I'm kind of interested in like Ray Davis because he seems really good.
Yeah.
But he's also swapping from, one of the best quarterbacks in football to Mitch Trubisky or Mitchell. I never know what, I think he prefers Mitchell, but either way. But their implied team total is actually not that bad. I mean, it is 20, but like that's kind of average for the slate. So you could do worse. To me, though, it's Corum standing out the most among the backs on this team.
I also think that the Rams actually the highest motivation to win. Like they're going to rest Stafford, they're going to rest Kupp and Nakua, but I think they actually should try to win, frankly, because if they get the 3 seed, that means they are at home potentially for 2. Like there's a non-zero chance the 2 seed gets upset given how strong the 7 seed will be in the NFC. So like if I could go for the 3 seed, I would. Now, yeah, I'm going to rest 87-year-old Matthew Stafford with his 16 clunky elbows and stuff like that. And yeah, I'm going to rest Cooper Kupp for his age 84 season and Puka Nakua because he's very good. But like, I'd still care about winning. It's like, I'm still going to game plan for this game. I know they're 6.5-point dogs, but like, I think the line will play because they need a gel because they've missed so much time this year. Corum, as mentioned, is a good back. Jimmy Garoppolo is not terrible. So Corum's my preferred guy, but I'm at least receptive to Shipley and Davis, depending on specifically offensive line stuff. Like if the Eagles said, okay, we're not going to play Lane Johnson, we're going to set Jordan Mailata and stuff like that, then I'm like, okay, I'll probably pass then. But like if both tackles are starting, then Shipley does bump up for me there. And Davis, I just don't know it's so hard to predict their running backs. Like I think the situation's good. I think the talent's good. I don't mind Trubisky overall compared to other backups, but just a weird situation. So Corum's number 1 for me, but I'm at least receptive to all 3 right now.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page here.
Okay. Josh Palmer has practiced on Wednesday and Thursday for the Chargers. Putting him up in the air for Sunday. The Chargers, as mentioned, may have nothing to play for if the Steelers win Saturday, or they would have nothing to play for if the Steelers win Saturday. The Steelers lose, the Chargers could get the 5 seed, which would get them a matchup with Houston in the opening round. I'd be very aware of everyone if the Steelers win Saturday. But let's say that the Steelers lose Saturday. Brandon, how are you viewing the Chargers in that scenario?
I think they'd be a really interesting route.
Yeah.
With Ladd McConkey's salary being 76, you're going to have to put him right up against, a Jordan Addison, a Cortland Sutton. There's some other names there, but when he's been like healthy and on the field and in key situations, he's their guy. Like there is no mistake. You can't make no mistake. He is their wide receiver one. He is really the engine to that entire offense. So I think he's fascinating. I haven't even looked. Justin Herbert's salary is 77. So he'd be in that tier of like, it's such a weird thing to say for Justin Herbert, but like he'd be behind Sam Darnold and Jared Goff for me, I think still. But he would be at least someone to consider. Like he might, I mean, Bo Nix is somewhat interesting, but I think it mostly just bring life to Ladd McConkey. Should I like more Chargers, do you think?
Would you consider J.K. Dobbins? And this one is tough because he has such a rich injury history. And it's like, that massive motivation and you got J.K. Dobbins hurt in week 18. That's a bad look. And like that's flashbacks to Mike Williams getting hurt for the Chargers, different regime. So there's that for sure. But like he's very clearly their best back. And they treated him like that in his return. 19 carries in that one target, a touchdown there, $7,500. I think he'd be a pretty thin play at that salary. And you'd want to be a guy using like maybe 15% of lineups, but I'm at least open to the idea of him. I'd rank him below McConkey, but like, I don't want to cross him off, I think is what I would say for Dobbins.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to, I mean, he's 400 less than Bucky, though. Like,
I mean, I'd have him with Bucky. It would not be the expensive Bucky. Yeah. Every time I talk, assume that it's a player with Bucky because Bucky and Gibbs would be in almost every lineup for me.
I think where I'll land with Dobbins is going to have to wait until the salary scroll.
Sure.
We'll have Aaron Jones there.
Sure.
Like, Rico Dowdle got a ton of carries last week.
He did.
Zach Charbonnet. Brian Robinson.
I think all three of those guys will play. Yeah.
RB5 on his team behind McNichols and
Chris
Rodriguez, apparently, all of a sudden. Tony Pollard's there. So I think it's going to take some looping around, but again, we'll know before lock. So that's helpful.
It is for sure. Packers could potentially avoid the 7 seed, but they need a win and a Commanders loss to get there. So Josh Jacobs told reporters he doesn't expect a ton of carries in week 18 as a result. So does that make Jacobs a cross off for you and any pass catchers here with Christian Watson likely sidelined once again?
Man, this team and their market shares just are tough. And Jacobs has kind of emerged as the one guy that I like the most consistently. But they're working in other backs, Emmanuel Wilson. Again, Romeo Doubs always leads in routes. He did again last week in that big game. Got a ton of targets, but just not a whole lot to show for it, even with some downfield work and some red zone work. So, I kind of just don't like it. Maybe I'd play Doubs, but I have an easy time. Sometimes I have a hard time. Like I feel bad being low on certain offenses. I'm kind of okay with it because the path to burning us is it gets minimal as market shares just go down. You're asking someone to basically score twice on 6 targets as opposed to scoring twice on 14 targets. So I'm kind of good missing out here. Is that too low?
Nope, I agree with you, and I think that Dobbs is the one guy to consider as well. So we're, I think, fully aligned when it comes to the Packers this week. Colts are out of it. Anthony Richardson didn't practice again on Thursday. Likely puts Joe Flacco in line to start the finale. Facing the Jags, so secondary we love to target. Any interest in Josh Downs, Michael Pittman? I wouldn't even include him if he hadn't done well last week. Alec Pierce as well too. So any interest in Josh Downs at Michael Pittman or Alec Pierce as they take on the Jags?
Did Downs get hurt last week?
I don't know, man. It was weird.
Okay, because his route rate was way down, and
he's been practicing in full this week, so I assume he was okay. But it was weird. Yeah.
He ran behind Pittman and Pierce. We're big fans of Alec Pierce. He had 7 targets of at least 10 yards downfield, so that's what I call a downfield target, for an ADOT of 21.4, which is honestly disgusting, and I love that. And the Jaguars are very beatable on the deep ball. They're the worst team at defending the downfield pass in terms of yards per target allowed. They're 31st in pressure rate. I'm not saying that I'm going to play a lot of Alec Pierce, but I'm also not going to be surprised if Alec Pierce makes the perfect lineup. Sure. He's probably a great example here of Colts have nothing to play for, but he can get downfield work. He's in the right spot for it against a team that just doesn't defend the downfield pass well. But also, am I going out of my way to build around Alec Pierce? As much as I love him, I kind of can't do that.
I'm the same. I am kind of curious. I've not run this, but I kind of wonder what his target per route rate has been the second half of the year relative to early on. Because it seems like he is getting more targets than he was before, at least. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It's just it's a thin play. We always make the cutoff 85 yards or 2 touchdowns. He's gotten to 80 yards 1, 2, 3, 4 times with 74 in another. So he's a really good football player. Just the volume's tough for him.
Yeah, I mean, I can look at his single game target shares here. Pierce, basically week 10, he got 20%. I'll just rip that off real quick because we're here. Because it's the type of play that could open things up.
Yeah.
So Alec Pierce since week 10, target per route rate 22%. That's above average slightly. It's not phenomenal.
For him, that's really good.
But for him,
he was probably a 14% kind of guy before that. If I had to ballpark it,
14%.
Wow.
That. So that's a big increase.
Interesting. One-Eyed Jack on YouTube did say Brian Thomas Jr. Pierce mini stacks. Watch for fireworks. I don't hate it. BTJ's salary is kind of high at 8,000, but I'm about to dig more into Pierce.
His workload BTJ's workload's so good, and you want to find the changes in motivation. They haven't had motivation for the whole season, basically. So
correct.
Same for Brock Bowers this week. It's not they're out, so don't consider him. So
exactly. Yep, I agree.
That's an interesting one.
Interesting for sure. Tony Pollard limited in practice both Wednesday and Thursday with his ankle injury. That's key because Tyjae Spears is unlikely to play due to a concussion. Titans have said they will start both quarterbacks would be pretty fun. They're going to use both Mason Rudolph and Will Levis against the Texans. So how would you handle Pollard if he is the top guy here without Spears?
Oh, that's so dysfunctional. If we get Pollard without Spears,
I mean, put Will Levis at tight end. Put Will Levis at tight end. Let Mason Rudolph play quarterback. Play both. I don't care. Who cares?
I think you're going to be higher on Pollard than I am. It's hard to get a good gauge for exposure levels just because there's so much that could change, right?
Yeah.
He'd probably be a 50% guy, though, for me at this rate.
Oh, okay.
He would help me
we're actually in line then, frankly.
Okay. Yeah. So he would help me avoid loading up on the more of the unknowns. And again, this is if he's full in practice today on Friday, no Spears, then I don't have to guess at what the workload might be for a Ray Davis or the efficiency of Blake Corum's offense. I know the efficiency here is not ideal, but he can get a lot of work.
Yeah. In the games Pollard has played with no Spears, he is at 22 carries and 4.5 targets per game with 116.3 yards from scrimmage per game. They were going to have Spears play a ton last week before he got hurt, which was a bummer for him primarily, but also he was going to have an awesome workload for DFS. I don't think they're going to quit and just not use Pollard. He also had not practiced on Wednesday since I believe week 13 or 14 prior to this week. So Seems like the ankle is healthier now than it was when he was dealing with the flu. So I think he's pretty interesting this week at 67. I think that I'm in line with you. Where you said 50%. Like if I can have 50% Pollard and then 50% someone else to go with Bucky and Gibbs, that's not bad. And 67's low for a guy who like we know can realistically get you 20 points.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So we are both on board with Pollard being a guy we'll go to. Again, we want to see what the injury report is on Friday and kind of see what Spears' status is too, but pretty receptive there. Cardinals be without all three of their usual backs, James Conner, Trey Benson, Amari DiMercado. They're all on IR. That leaves Michael Carter there. Yes, that is the same Michael Carter used to play for the Jets. Real throwback there. Played 70% of the snaps in week 18. That was in part because DJ Dallas is the only other back who was active there. They'd like to have someone else up this week because Connor got hurt again mid-game. What is your interest level in Michael Carter this week at $5,800?
Relatively high. He ran over half the routes, had 2 targets.
He's not bad.
I don't think he's bad. I mean,
yeah. I think it's a pretty impressive, like, rushing scheme for them. And Kyler will play too. So it's like decent infrastructure for Carter as well.
Yeah. And like, I mean, not that this matters a ton, but he was always like the second guy. It was like, oh, Javonte Williams is the better running back from, North Carolina. I thought Carter like rated out pretty well, all things considered. Was a relatively decently high draft pick, if memory serves. I think 3rd, 4th round.
Yeah. Got squeezed by Brees.
Like, I'm kind of okay with this. I like this a little more than some other plays we might be considering. So
Carter versus Corum.
I would feel better about Corum just having a Kyren Williams role.
Sure.
And they're like, hey, you're Kyren this game. We're going to get you 90% of the snaps and all the red zone work. But Carter's kind of emerging as like maybe my RB2 among the pure value backs.
Okay. I think that if you were to give me like 100%, like let's say I'm going to use Bijan too, but like let's say hypothetically I go with Bucky and Gibbs in every lineup. That leaves me 100% exposure for my 3rd slot. I'd probably divide it like 50% Pollard, 25% Corum, 25% Carter. Like I'd be cool with that personally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
look. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, because the other thing is like you can talk yourself into Will Shipley, and then you kind of get, let's say you build 10 lineups, right?
Yeah.
But then you're just really dispersing things. That's what I would like to avoid. So I'm going to try to build a core. And I feel like there's a better case necessarily for a Corum or probably Carter than the Eagles. Like,
yep, I agree with that too. And like he's paired with Kyler, which is the best quarterback of. We joke about Kyler a lot, but he is a better quarterback than Tanner McKee or Kenny Pickett and Jimmy Garoppolo. Yeah. So I think that I go Kyler there. So pretty even between Corum and Carter, but I do like both. Brock Purdy ruled out this week for the Niners due to an elbow injury, which means I think that Josh Dobbs will start above Brandon Allen. Deebo Samuel didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday. Ricky Pearsall limited both days. George Kittle was out Wednesday, but limited Thursday. Why would he play? Please sit George Kittle. Protect our boy. They've got nothing on the line and a backup quarterback against the Cardinals. So any 49ers interest for you this week?
Not really.
Save George Kittle. That's all I asked for. Like, protect him from himself. He's a psychopath. Like, let him sit. Let him be healthy for the start of 2025 so I can just watch George Kittle play football next year. Rest him, please.
Yeah,
and I don't
salaries are just too high for the pass catchers.
Could not agree more. Amir Abdullah, who I at one point thought would be the best running back in football back in like 2016, 2015. Got a ton of work for the Raiders last week. Always knew he'd be a workhorse. Not yet practicing this week. Alexander Madison would be the only guy left if Abdullah were ruled out, but they've also used Sincere McCormick above him. They've used Amir Abdullah above him. They've used Azir White above him. Would you consider Madison if he's the lone guy left standing against the Chargers?
I mean, we've seen Madison with like games where he's had elevated workloads. He's got, let me see here, 6 games with at least a 50% snap rate, averaging 68.5 scrimmage yards per game, like a 57% red zone rushing share. the odds he burns us are just not very high.
Yep.
So I'm going to say no.
I agree with you there as well. Finally, Chris Olave once again practicing in full this week for the Saints. He was full last week too, but ultimately did not play. Why are they doing this to him? His salary is $5,800. Maybe it's him doing it voluntarily. I don't know. But we'll talk about the Saints in the bookmaker section. But similar to George Kittle, please let our boy Chris Olave rest up so he can be a full go for next year instead. Let's transition now to the bookmaker section and talk about the game of the week. That is the Minnesota Vikings at the Detroit Lions. And could not be a better spot for DFS. Total in this game is 56.5. That's the highest total we've had since the start of last year. Lions here by 2.5. Both teams obviously have massive motivation to win, with the winner getting the 1 seed, the loser going on the road next week in the playoffs. It's a perfect situation. So any reservations for you to stacking this game?
I think the only reservation that you could probably like try to justify or talk yourself into is that the defenses are good enough to kind of throw enough wrinkles in, and it's more of a, hey, we're trying to win the game, or like, hey, we're trying not to lose the game rather than win the game. Yeah. I don't know if I think that that's how these teams are going to play.
Dan
this
Campbell
one,
would never.
Dan Campbell's not going to do that. Minnesota has the chance to make a pretty dramatic comeback and chase down the Lions. So the only thing I can think of is, yeah, there's still a possibility that this one's like 17-13 because they're just trying to grind clock. But again, while there's a possibility of that, I think it's pretty minimal. So for the most part, I'm all in. This game is so much better than the rest of the board. The over-under is 14.5 points higher than the slate average, which is disgusting.
I think it's 8 points higher than the second highest total.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Detroit's implied team total is 8.4 points higher than the slate average. Minnesota 5.9. So basically expected to score an extra touchdown a piece, if not more, than like the average team on the board. It's a 2 QB game.
Yeah.
There are at least 6 pass catchers to consider. One of the best running back plays of the week. Just not going to overthink this one.
So you said the 2 QB game. I agree. When we had the Bills-Lions game a couple weeks ago, we said it was the QB1 and QB2. We wound up on Goff as QB2 because of the game environment. I'm currently leaning as it being the same this week, where the QB1 and QB2 are both in this game. Do you agree with that as well?
I'm leaning toward that. With Josh Allen not in contention, the name that does jump out in terms of rushing upside is Jaden Daniels. I'm not convinced he's going to run for like 127 yards this week. Like this game's important to them, but I think that they
don't get him hurt. Yeah.
So that kind of takes that level of threat, or at least really, really diminishes the chance that, hey, this quarterback went for 150 and 2 on the ground and had like 250 yards and a touchdown or something through the air. So it's a lot of pocket passers. And with that being the case, we're getting an indoor game with, again, that massive total. I think it's QB1, QB2. The question, though, is who's the QB1 of these two?
I go Goff, personally.
Yes. He's at home.
He is at home. He is favored. He has been the more efficient quarterback this year. The Lions are ranked 2nd in schedule-adjusted passing efficiency according to Number Fire's metrics. The Vikings are 6th. So still very good. But like if I think about who has higher odds of like imploding this week, it's Darnold. I know that's weird because Goff has always been that guy, but like I think that it is Darnold. And Goff has shredded. He's been traditionally pretty good against Brian Flores defenses. I know that we have this perception that Jared Goff is like a scared cat who like runs away whenever there's any sign of disturbance, but like he has shredded Brian Flores in general, like blitz heavy defenses. So I think that's very fun for Goff. Salary for him, $200 lower than Darnold. That actually does go a long way this week. And like, yeah, I want to use Jahmyr Gibbs in every lineup, but like I can use him with Goff because of all the rushing work that he gets. I mentioned before that Bills game, he went for 44.06, almost matched Allen in that game. I mean, not quite, but like he was really good in that game. I think down at 45. So like he was right there as well. So he can have big upside. He's at home, slight favorite. It sounds like you're in agreement that Goff's the QB1, same tier as Darnold, but the QB1 for both of us.
Yes. Now, again, if I'm playing devil's advocate here, the only thing that I can really say is these teams kind of play things close to the vest. When we saw this matchup first, no team had more than 56 plays. There was like good performances, but nothing amazing. Before we dig into like this whole game and just say, hey, don't overthink it, what are the odds you think that happens?
Well, I took the under. So it could happen. But also I took the under despite the fact this is the 5th highest total I've ever projected, dating back to week 15 of 2022. I have 53.5, which is massive, but it's not 56.5. So for me, I think it's the highest total in the slate by not the same margin as like what the books have it at, but it's still 4 points. So that's pretty respectable.
And despite the fact that Detroit had 56 plays, Minnesota had 52, they scored 60 total points. So like,
right, defensive touchdown in the mix there.
Yeah,
but like, yeah, it was a weird game. I know like Gibbs had this like psychopath run where he like broke a dude's ankles. So I think it could happen for sure, which is why we don't go 100% between these two quarterbacks. Yeah. But I don't see a lot of scenarios where some of the individual players in this game, like where all the individual players flop. So I think I'll have at least 1 to 2 players from this game in every lineup. And like on average, I'll have like 2.5 players from this game per lineup, I think, honestly. Because like if I'm going Goff, I'm probably double stacking him with, maybe even triple stacking him with like Gibbs, Laporta, Amon-Ra. Like I could see that. I think a full-on onslaught is in play this week too.
Yeah, I keep building like Goff, Gibbs, Jameson, Addison, and Hawkinson.
Perfect.
Like it's a value. It's pretty much a value stack to the best game.
Lowest value exposure to this game. That's sick.
Yeah. So I feel really good. I don't know if we really need to talk about Jahmyr Gibbs too much. You know, the snap rate wasn't
1 sentence explainer for why you love Gibbs.
He was awesome last week on just above a 50% snap rate, and this week matters a ton.
He might play every snap this week. Like I had the under in his rushing yards last week, and he played a 52% snap rate. I felt great. Like there's Jamar Jefferson, there's Craig Reynolds, awesome. And then he busts off like a 30-yard run. It's like, cool, man. Thanks. I appreciate that. Like just so easy for him. It's like a hot knife through butter. Like I want that. So he is the best play on the slate above Bucky or no?
Yeah, I would say so.
I agree too. What about Aaron Jones? $7,300. That's again pretty low salary exposure to this game. He's only 600 above Tony Pollard, who we both like for this week. That's a pretty good salary. Snap rate did come back down last week, which was kind of odd because it was 82% the week before, 52% last week. So it's a weird situation. Where are you on Jones at 73?
Yeah, I keep getting hung up on him because we loved him last week in the revenge spot, the regression spot, and it wasn't what you would expect. Like, honestly, it wasn't the worst. He had 77 scrimmage yards on a snap rate that just kind of plummeted. I know he's not 100%. He's probably never going to be 100% again, if we're being honest. Still limited in practice. If he's limited in practice on Friday still, are you just kind of out? Do you think this role's too likely? Okay.
I think it's too big of a game.
I think so too.
So I think I'd still be there if he's limited and questionable.
So you're talking about your Tony Pollards, your Blake Corums, etc. Where does Joe? Maybe we just save it for the scroll. Because who else did you ask me about there? It's 75.
Carter and Corum.
No,
Dobbins.
J.K. Dobbins. Yeah. So you're going to have to kind of ask yourself Aaron Jones or J.K. Dobbins if you're going to be in that range. Maybe Jones. Yeah, I'm going Jones too.
Okay. I agree with that too. So you had a lot of pass catchers in this game. I think you said 6, right? 6 pass catchers.
I think it's 3 per team, 2 receivers, both tight ends, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
How are you ranking them? Like, I'm just going to put you on the spot right now. Like,
ranking them in terms of
considering salary, considering roster construction, stuff like that.
I might go Laporta 1.
Oh, okay, cool.
This is going to be so because I'm going to rank the the two absolute stud receivers at the bottom, because
I agree.
We're just all over Jameer,
Correct.
Bucky. We haven't even gotten really to Bijan yet. So I'm going to go Laporta, Addison, Jameson, Hawkinson, Jefferson, Amon-Ra.
I might have the exact same order.
It's
either Addison or Laporta 1, because Addison 71 is low, and he's like electric with like really good upside, and I've totally changed my tune on him from where I was at earlier this year.
I mean, I'd hear that. That's probably the only one I'd listen to, like, sort of flipping. I'm not going to put Jameson first. He scored twice, got, the carry and like the hook and ladder. The workload itself was kind of typical, sort of.
Yeah.
So I don't want to overreact to that. And again, with Jefferson, it's a matter of I can't get to 9,500 very often.
Right. I would need to get into you can get there if you go with a Will Shipley or a Blake Corum. And so that's part of the reason why you want to do that at times.
Yes.
But if I have one lineup, I'm going to go with Gibbs and Bucky and probably, Pollard, Aaron Jones, someone like that. And that means I'm stuck with Addison, which is fine. Stuck with is derogatory, given he has a 23%
potentially the wide receiver one.
Right. Yeah. Right. 23% target share with Hawkinson back, 37% deep target share, 29% in the red zone. That's absurd for 71. Even if we don't consider the game environment, that's a really good role for a guy at this number. And you put in the best game of the week, that's sick. So I think the Laporta's one because tight end kind of sucks this week, but I would go Addison a strong 2 for me.
Yeah, it's the fact that tight end's not great that kind of puts me there. So
okay.
And I like Hawkinson, but Laporta's at home.
Yeah,
I have just higher scoring expectations for Detroit.
Same.
And then Jameson again. I can't quite put him over an Addison, anything like that. So I feel pretty good here.
Yeah.
My main fear is we don't get enough Jefferson, but I'm going to make sure I get some.
Yeah.
So again, that's maybe the list. Do you want to play Justin Jefferson in this must-win game? If so, maybe jot it down so that whenever you build your 5, 6, 7, 8 lineups, you don't say, "Oh, I don't have any Justin Jefferson."
I think that what I would do is if let's say you're playing 2 lineups this week, I would have Jefferson in 1. I like him enough to do that. And that means I can still have Bucky and Gibbs, but I have to force in one of the value backs. And that's fine. But I think that he's worth 2 lineups. I'd want him in 1 because he's a psychopath and again, complimentary. So I think that for me, it would be 2 lineups and getting Jefferson in 1. But my main lineup, I'm far more likely to have Addison in that top dollar single entry lineup.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page here.
Yeah.
I will just note, and maybe we move on from here because I think we covered everything else. Aaron Jones should have about 12 touchdowns, but he has 7. So I don't know. Maybe I need to bump him up a little bit.
Just stealing red zone work. It's great. Jalen Naylor stealing touchdowns. It was a good time. Loved last week. Everything about it was super fun and enjoyable. Didn't have a single regret at all. Okay. Let's move now to the second game in our bookmaker section for this week, which is the Panthers and the Falcons. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook, the Falcons are by 7.5. Total in this game is 48.5. The reason we're talking about this here is because it is the second highest total on the slate. Panthers have been out of it since the preseason, and they've been playing hard. They've still been putting up some points here recently. Bryce Young looking pretty good. Falcons need a win to have a shot at the playoffs. They need help too, but they need a win here. So they've been fine under Michael Penix. So what's your view of the Falcons here and any bringbacks on the Panther side of things?
I like the Falcons. Now we got to monitor the health of their top 2 pass catchers, though.
It's annoying.
So
I think it was fine, but
they're probably fine, and unless they really cannot go, they're going to go, right? Now, Drake London has one of the most fascinating workloads in football in terms of his high leverage work. I'm starting to look at, again, targets that I'm just calling money zone targets where you're inside the 10 or in the end zone when the ball actually is, in your hands or near you. He's phenomenal. I don't have it all pulled up, and I'm afraid if I do it, because it's a massive spreadsheet, it's going to slow me down. So I'll do it after I'm done talking. But his workload there is great. So I'm not really that concerned about his full health, because we're targeting him for touchdown potential as opposed to we need 200 yards from him. Mooney, I'm a little more concerned about just because he's a bigger play threat.
Right.
Does any of this bump you up on Kyle Pitts at all?
No. No. Come on. What? Jeez. Okay. I'm going to go back to
I'm
London.
just asking.
It's an offensive question. How would you do that to me? Oh gosh. Okay. So as we've discussed plenty on the show, we're not really London guys because it's kind of like a Keenan Allen situation where he's probably not going to burn you for not using him. But I will say in the 2 games with Penix, London has a 34% target share. He has a 39% deep target share and 38% in the red zone. That 38% red zone share has been there all year. Like, that's been awesome, regardless who's been a quarterback. The deep target share skewing more towards him versus Mooney is interesting to me. And I think that's pretty intriguing. And London did go for 106 yards against the Commanders. Salaries come down to $7,000. We've got some guys around 7,000 we like a lot. I will not put him above Addison, but I like Cortland Sutton. I think that London is in that range where I might put him above Sutton, despite the fact that I like Sutton a lot, just because like he's getting a bit more deep work. They're indoors, must-win game, bad defense, salaries come down. I think this might be the highest I bet on London all year long. So it kind of sounds like we're on the same page, like for different reasons, but like it sounds like we wind up in the same place.
Yeah. So in games with Penix, he's had 57% of those really high leverage. Like that's when I look back, that's where your touchdown rate actually spikes and matters.
Yeah.
And
he has no touchdowns in those 2 games.
Like that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm building a lineup here, trying to hover. I've got the Detroit, Minnesota mega stack, got 5 players from that game with including Gibbs with Bucky. And I've got 7,200 left for a receiver. And I've already included Jordan Addison. Now I can't get to Cortland Sutton. I might need to quote unquote settle for Drake London. And I'm feeling pretty good about that. So I think that's pretty indicative for me of where I am with London. So hopefully he's, good to go, full in practice. We're gonna talk defense eventually. Yeah. Nope. So you talked motivation.
Yeah.
And if we go back, I can, just because we're here and you're kind of building a lineup, I think this is important for overall roster construction. If you sort by salary, the lowest salary defense you get that you flagged as like key motivation is the Vikings at 41. I'm not going to play the Vikings. So you're going to have to make that concession probably at defense, even though it kind of goes a little bit against the trend that you laid out. Right. But I'd rather just make that concession at defense than
I agree
anywhere else this week.
I didn't realize how much I liked London until we started talking about this game, but like $7,000 is like the threshold in order to burn you for not using him just goes down the lower the salary goes. And like, that's a low enough salary to, I think, encapsulate his ceiling issues. And the ceiling issues may not be that bad given all the money targets we're talking about. So I think I'm growing way more fond of London. I liked him before. Like I'm growing more towards him right now. And I agree with your concerns around Mooney too, which may be part of it as well.
I hope nobody yells at me for like money targets, because I don't recall seeing that anywhere. I just try to give it like a
every term has been used everywhere. So if you've used it before, sorry, please reach out and we'll change it. But it's not intentional.
I don't know if I'll change it because I don't know what else to change it to, but
yeah, I don't know either. Okay, let's talk Bijan. $9,200. He's above both Gibbs and Bucky, who we adore.
In terms of salary?
Or no, in terms of salary. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Should have clarified that. Thank you. $9,200 in the games this year, 106.8 yards per game, which is a fine number, but not amazing for 92. I think that's a big part of why I'm just like okay with him. Like he's been fine with Penix, but like the offense has kind of been okay too, but it's a much better spot. They're at home facing just a really bad defense, which they were in Penix's first start too. I don't know. having a hard time getting as high on him as I am on Irving and on Gibbs. So sell me on why Bijan should be at least near that top tier with those two.
Critical game. He's phenomenal. The matchup could not be better. I look at I kind of do some adjusted game scores for running back. This is the best situation. It's going to account for things like your matchup, implied team total, rush defense matchup. It is, slightly better than what we're getting for Bucky. So I still have to rank him third among the studs due to the things you laid out. I can't really, I'm not going to make a case necessarily that that he should be above either Gibbs or Bucky, but I think it's pretty close. And frankly, if his salary, let me phrase it this way. If his salary were somewhere in between those two at 84, where would you
a lot higher?
So
it's salary based.
It's salary.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
It's not him. It's his salary. Yes.
Okay, I got you.
Yep. So I think we both agree on the workload and the motivation and stuff like that. It's more so just the salary stuff, which is fair. There is a scenario in which he hangs 40, and you can't say that for everyone. So I think it's necessary to weasel him in. Right now, I'm thinking probably 20%-ish Bijan, because I will have some lines where I don't have both Bucky and Gibbs. I would like to go 100, but I'm not going to go 100.
Yeah.
So I can filter out some there. Maybe there's lines where I just go pure value at receiver, or maybe I use Penix at quarterback and really jam in Bijan there with Gibbs and Bucky. So I think that winds up being about 20%. Is that too low on him given how good the matchup, the role, and stuff like that are?
It's not, because it's impossible. When I was first building, I was like, okay, let me get Goff or Darnold with there's value backs, but there's a big three at running back.
Correct.
We know who that is. We've been saying it for a while now. I really can't see myself justifying too many lineups where I go that route. You have to go pure value everywhere else. You're asking a lot from no room for error with touchdown regression. And Bijan scored a bunch these past two games. Scored 4 times on the ground in these 2 games. You're asking for Bucky, Gibbs, and Bijan to be perfect, and that the value receivers do anything. Because even if they each get 24, and you just get a donut from a value receiver to make things work, that's tough.
Yeah. You mentioned value. There is some potential value in this game, both the quarterback and Michael Penix. We'll talk about him first, but then also I want you to get your thoughts on the pass catchers, Adam Thielen and Jalen Coker, who's $4,900 for this week. Penix, $6,900. So is Bryce Young. I'll just throw that out there too. Where are you on Penix, considering that I think we agree that the top 4 quarterbacks are Darnold, Goff, Baker, and Daniels?
Yeah. I'm fine with Penix. The EPA numbers are pretty average. This is a good spot, good overall matchup where he should be able to be efficient. The question is, and you're going to yell at me, but I know where my head's at and where my heart's at. It's a little bit like Tua, where it's he can be efficient, but if they're not necessarily throwing in the red zone a ton,
right,
and he's not racking up touchdowns,
he also doesn't have as much game. He's very efficient there. Didn't matter. Yeah.
I think he looked more good than bad against Washington, and I see the case for it, especially if you're using that salary to get elsewhere. The question really becomes, are you more likely to go from Goff to Penix or from Bucky to Aaron Jones? Something like
probably that. Bucky to Aaron Jones, frankly.
Yeah. Which kind of tells us a lot. I don't know that. I think Penix will probably have a good day. I don't know that he's going to torch us. I think I'm learning that I'm higher on him than you are.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He's just facing the worst pressure rate team in football.
Yeah.
They let up a massive success rate, worst in football. So it sounds like you like Bryce Young though. Do you like Bryce Young more than Michael Penix?
Receptive to? Like he's running, which is new and fun. He was not running earlier this year at all, but ever since he started starting again, like he's actually been running a decent amount. He's been running in key situations. He got some swag to him again, which is fun. Pass catchers I don't hate in Thielen and Coker, so I'm probably not going to use him realistically. But like I don't want to, just ignore him and not think about him at least. So at the end of the day, I'm going to use him. Most likely not, but like I want to at least give him some thought is what I would say there.
I think that's fine as well. I think that he stacks pretty easily with someone you're not going to like to discuss, but Adam
I have
Thielen.
notes on him.
Give me your notes. Give me your notes.
He has 99 plus yards in 3 of the past 5 games. That's my entire notes section on Adam Thielen.
Okay.
$6,400. He clearly still has juice. I capitulate. I was wrong. I'm sorry.
Wait, that's very nice of you.
Yeah.
I mean, Thielen has to be the priority here.
Correct.
I like Jalen Coker just fine. Xavier Legette had a 70% snap rate back in the lineup last week. That's fine, but I'd rather go Coker over Legette. I don't want to get too much exposure here. And to be honest, I might just limit it to Thielen.
Okay. I would say with Coker, the key appeal is salary is $4,900. So it's a kind of a question of like, I could use a Will Shipley or I could use Jalen Coker and not burn a slot in a running back. I think that to me is the most attractive part of Coker is he's a receiver, not a running back, but also will play 88% of the snaps against a defense that is terrible against receivers. They only got one good quarter who will probably be on Thielen. So it's like, I think it's a lot of factors pointing to him. Like, I don't want to have too much Coker because like we saw last week what can happen when you do that. But like he's at least on the list, I would say again this week at 49.
Any Legette, and I'll say I know if you look at the box score, just at 28 yards, but 9 targets, 4 of which were at least 10 yards downfield. He had a 46% air yard share. He was targeted on 43% of his routes, which is pretty sick. Do you think that expand? Because like it seems like they wanted Jalen Coker to be the guy, and now maybe it's all 3 of them with like Legette and Coker kind of just being the clear 2-3 behind Thielen.
Yeah. I mean, he's a first round pick. Final game his rookie year. Like maybe they try to get him cooking a little bit. Like that could be the case for him. So maybe if I have like too much Legette, I just like swaps him out or too much Coker, like take out a couple and put in Legette. Cause like, frankly, is there that big of a difference between them? Probably not. So yeah, I think it should have some. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I'm bored with that too. Anything else for you in this game?
What's the Panthers running back situation?
Don't care. Not going to use them.
Yeah, yep. Me the same here.
Well, Miles Sanders might. It sounds like he'll be back. But like, what's it? He's
minimum salary. He's 4,000. I've seen his name in some optimizers as well.
Full practices on Wednesday and Friday. I've played worse. I probably won't, but like I've played worse. So I think that's where I'm at.
We'll get back to him in the salary scroll.
I think that's a fair way to think about it, but he's up there. He's a consideration, I would say, at least. I'd rather not, but like, consideration if I must.
It was like him or Shipley kind of a,
What would you say there?
Probably Sanders.
Okay. Receptive was what I would say. Let's talk now about our final game in the bookmaker section. That is the Saints at the Buccaneers. Right now, FanDuel Sportsbook. Bucks favored by 14.5, and the total in this game, 43.5. And the Bucks implied total continues to climb. Yeah, we're not talking about the Saints. The Bucks implied total is climbing. It was 28.5. It is now up because their spread lengthened by a point there. We were on the Bucks last week. They went nuts. Another must-win spot here. Any alterations this week? What's your favorite way to target the Bucks this week?
Bucky Irving is my favorite way to target them. I'm also very into Baker, Mike Evans, and our guy Jalen McMillions.
I agree on all of that. Like, it's such an easy team because not only do they have to win, but they're good. We know where the ball is going. Like, that's so hard to find this week. And so it's hard for me to decline that. The only like criticism I would have is Evan's salary is kind of high, 89. And like we're talking about Jefferson, I prefer Jefferson over him. And I'm not going to be in that range a ton, like as much as I'd like to. So I want to weasel in some Evans because he could go for 159 and 2 because he did that 3 weeks ago. But like he's more of a FOMO play. And I mean that in a complimentary way because he can burn me. He's a FOMO play more than anything. So like, let's say I have 5 Baker lineups. I still might have him only in 2 of those just because the salary's so high.
Would you go McMillan in the other 3?
McMillan in 2, Bucky in 1.
Okay.
It's like, say I suck up all the yardage, basically. Maybe it'd be a Bucky and McMillan, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know that it doesn't necessarily do a lot of people a lot of good to hear. Like, yeah, I'll get some. So I'm not putting you on blast or anything here. But it is like, there are a couple of names up there. Jefferson being the most obvious one. I love Amon-Ra, but the salary really leaves no room for error. Mike Evans could have a big game. And then there's kind of a drop till, Brian Thomas Jr. So he is one of the wide receivers who could absolutely torch us. I'm more likely over 10 lineups, not 10 Baker lineups, but just 10 total lineups not to have him because there are other combinations I need to get to. But it is pretty scary to think about going into this week without a lot of Mike Evans.
Right. I think it is, like you said, it's scary just because he does have the potential to go bananas and we have to account for that for sure. So I'll get him in there, but I won't have him in non-Baker lineups, I think is what I would say there. McMillan I will though. McMillan's salary $80 or $6,100. Now, some risk with Cade Otton potentially back this week. He got in a limited session on Thursday. I don't think that means he's a guarantee to play, frankly, just because like he didn't practice Wednesday, has not played the previous 2 games. So they called him a game time decision for this game. It is a 1 p.m. game Eastern, so like that does help. But even if Otton does play, if you look at the past 5 games from McMillan, 2 of which Otton played in, he has a 17% target share, 24% deep, 19% in the red zone. He's converting on his red zone looks, not converting yet on the downfield looks, but he could. So building blocks for upside, 61, pairs nice to the quarterback, low salary, massive motivation, at home, should be efficient offense, checks a lot of boxes. So I do like him even if Otton does play, but I'll like him more if Otton does not go. How do you feel about McMillan?
I really like him, but I am hesitant. If you look at these last 4 games, he scored 6 times.
Sustainable.
And he should have 2 based on my play-by-play data. Even with 6 touchdowns in 4 games, he's not necessarily like torched us. The yardage is not quite there. As you mentioned, it's almost exclusively due to like a lack of downfield conversion.
Right.
And that's awkward because it's not like a thing that plagues this whole team. Right. I don't think it's that Jalen McMillan can't. I know he can get open downfield. So
correct.
It is one of those like, maybe he doesn't score, but he finally gets 110 yards. So I do like him a good amount, but I want to just be cautious because he's a really easy player to plug in a lot this week whenever we want to get access to high salary quarterbacks and running backs, where, again, take away the touchdowns, sure. But this team should score a ton of points, and he's been really involved. So I just don't want to be a little bit, like I need to pump the brakes a tad. But overall, I think McMillan is possibly the best receiver play I'll say specifically under 65.
That means you're lopping off Jameson Williams.
I sure am.
So
Thielen or McMillan?
McMillan.
Just due to the offense?
I would consider DJ Moore.
DJ Moore's getting a lot of buzz as well.
Is he? Oh, that's annoying. I consider DJ Moore as like the only other guy to really consider above McMillan. So I agree. He's at least one or two. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's
so
fair.
point being, he does stand out,
Yeah.
and you can really build lineups where you're just like hovering in that 6K range at receiver. He's going to be part of that, but got to make sure I'm not 100%.
Yeah.
I'd cap it at like 35% McMillan, hopefully.
I was going to say 40, so we're fully in line there. Okay. Bucky, one sentence explainer of why he is the best person to ever exist on this planet. Go.
Scrimmage yards and touchdown regression candidate.
Yep. I'll go with that. He has had 150 plus yards in scrimmage, I think 3 times in the past 6 full games, which is bananas. I've said it like 6 times this week, but like there are some really good plays with him and Gibbs. Like I have no objections. His salary went down. My jaw dropped when I saw that. Shouldn't have happened. So Truckee Irving back in our lives. Baker QB3? Question mark?
I think so.
Okay.
I wish I was key on Baker last week, but didn't get there as much as I wanted. Due to wind, which I'm fine, kind of like letting that sort of dictate things a bit. Yeah. But, I see no real path of resistance here. So Baker, I think, is QB3 over Jaden.
I agree.
Just because I don't know that Jaden has to do everything this week.
That's the big thing for me. Yeah. I agree with you there. Okay. Sounds like we are pretty much in lockstep across the board in this game. What could possibly go wrong? Weather for this week, there are 3 spots where wind speeds are at least 15 miles per hour, and they all involve backup quarterbacks. It's 13 miles per hour, 11 miles per hour. 15 miles per hour for the Bills and Patriots in Foxborough, so downgrade passing games there. Not that you were going to be there anyway. 13 miles per hour for the Giants and the Eagles. I believe that game is in Philadelphia. And then 11 miles per hour for the Jets and Dolphins in East Rutherford. So Aaron Rodgers going out party. A little bit of damper there with the 11 mile per hour winds. Let's do it now, Brandon. Let's go position by position, breaking down our top plays for this week over on old FanDuel.com. Beginning at quarterback, we talked about the big 4. Those big 4 being Jaden Daniels, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Jared Goff. Do you still feel those are the top 4 guys for this week? Anybody else flirting with that tier for you?
The only other name, and maybe it's a little salary related, but he's not in this tier. It would be Bo Nix. I think he's going to be a step below these guys. So my tier 1 is going to be Goff, Darnold, Baker, and Jaden in that order.
Yeah.
With Bo Nix being really interesting against the team that's playing backups, and it's an important game for Denver. He can run. I think that will probably be something he just does because they're playing all out here.
Yeah.
So that's appealing. But if I'm pivoting away from one of the top 4, I'm probably more likely to try to save salary with a Penix or Bryce Young.
Sure.
So I don't know if I'm going to get to Nix, especially because he's got stacking issues. If you're not going with Sutton, you can justify Marvin Mims, but I think Nix is probably that next name on the list that we should at least discuss or be aware of. Do you feel differently with Bo Nix?
No, I agree with you. He's running a bit more again. He had a lull where he stopped running because they were playing pretty good football, frankly. That's part of why he stopped running. But desperation spots now, at least 23 yards in 3 consecutive games. No touchdowns for him rushing since end of October. So potentially could see a bit of an uptick there. So I like him. Not a guarantee to be my player pool, but I think he'd probably be QB5, like you said. But also, again, that might not be enough to get him there. And, again, just echoing you the entire show, if I don't go with one of the top 4, I might be more likely to pivot all the way down and go with a Penix or a Young instead.
What about a Bo Nix or a motivated Justin Herbert?
I might not get to Herbert anyway, just because like he's still like a little bit banged up, and I don't think he's run a ton. He hasn't run a ton recently. So I think Herbert's more so in the playoffs. Like he gets another week removed from the ankle injuries, stuff like that. So I'll be back on him eventually, but not quite yet.
I agree.
Okay. So having discussed those guys, anyone else you want to shout out? Like Jordan Love, 73, Caleb Williams, 71. Anybody else you want to Flacco, Aaron Rodgers, Trubisky, anything else you want to touch on here or no?
I try to play no more than 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I've got 6 I'm considering.
Yeah.
A couple of them are easy to lop off. I'm not going to consider more, and I feel okay with that.
I think I agree there too. So your Love's a quarterback. Who are you going with there?
Goff and Darnold if we're doing 2.
Same. I agree with that too. And then Baker be the honorable mention. Love for me.
Sure. Yep.
Running backs, Saquon this week. Bummer there. We've talked about Gibbs and Irving and Bijan being the big 3. For me, it's more of a big 2 with Gibbs and Irving, where I think that those guys, and it sounds like you kind of wound up being there as well by the end of the show. How aggressive are you willing to be with those 2 specifically, and how much Bijan do you want?
I want 100% of all of them and just figure it out from there, but it's not super doable. Yeah. But I'd say 75 to 80% of Bucky and Gibbs, just because there are going to be times where I want to go up from Gibbs to Bijan or down from Bucky elsewhere. So I'm probably going to wind up with more Bucky just due to salary than Gibbs. But it's going to be, I'd say about 75, 80% probably.
Okay. I think I'll be 90 is what I want to be. Like if I have 10 lineups, I'll have one lineup where I consciously omit each one, basically. Because I think they're both pretty under salary. Bucky should be 85, so that puts him $600 lower. Gibbs should be 95, so he's $700 lower than he should be. I think Bijan should be about 88. It's about $400 above where he should be. And I think that's kind of the deciding factor for me. Like he's still worth including because the ceiling is so good, but should be about $400 lower.
I'm not going to argue with any of this. I think we're 80% versus 90% is not worth the breath. So
in the 8,000 range beyond that, Jonathan Taylor is the one guy I think I could even give breath to. $8,500 at home against the Jags. The Colts can't make the playoffs anymore. Any JT for you or no?
I mean, he's been running about 30 times a game the last 2.
They got to scale that back now they're done, right?
You would think. So I think not. Again, if I'm moving away from Bucky and Gibbs, it's going to be to Bijan or to save some salary. Yep. So
I agree. No HN, correct?
No, not for me.
Okay. So let me scroll down. We get, I don't think Mixon's going to play a whole lot this week. Dobbins, 75. Aaron Jones, 73. Breece Hall, 72. Rico Dowdle, 71. Let's cut off there. In this range, I feel pretty firm in saying that Jones is our top guy, correct?
Yeah. I'm not playing Breece. Are you playing Breece?
No. He was in the Week 18 perfect lineup last year, but that doesn't matter. So is Carson Wentz. We can run it back. Put Carson Wentz at quarterback, put Breece at running back, just run it back.
Hey,
go.
Hey, you can. I'm not gonna.
I did bet Carson Wentz plus 10.5. I didn't bet the Chiefs. I bet Carson Wentz. We're gonna phrase it that way because 2025 is a year of mistakes, and I'm gonna embrace it. But Dobbins 75, Rico 71. Either of them come close to the Jones tier for you, or is Jones on a tier of his own?
I think Jones probably in a tier of his own with the expectation that his role is going to climb in the game of the week.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll get to Rico, even if he gets 20 carries. I'm not that worried about it. You got 23 last week.
They just cut Zeke, so that's good.
So
they weren't using him a whole lot anyway, but it doesn't hurt.
They used him enough. They used him inside the 10, which is super sick. But
yeah. Rico or Charbonnet? We're gonna loop Charbonnet.
I was just gonna ask.
Yeah, I go Charbonnet.
Charbonnet.
Yeah, because the Seahawks were eliminated on Sunday after the tiebreaker thing with the Rams. They were live before that, and they played hard against the Bears. They didn't play well, but they played hard. Charbonnet in games without Walker has a 50% red zone share, 102.2 yards from scrimmage per game. If they use him the way they typically do, then he's phenomenal at 7,000. I think that what are the odds they do that? Then you know, like 70%, 60%, somewhere in there. So he's like a good play, right?
Yeah, I think he's a good play. I don't know that even with that, I don't know that I'll get there
Yeah.
because hopefully there's a little more certainty. But, we might get a report where Charbonnet is going to be featured,
Sure.
and that would really bump him up, though.
He is making me rethink my Tony Pollard position, though, because it's only $300 off. And like they're both in the same situation. Charbonnet is healthier than Pollard is. Like the only difference is that the Seahawks were eliminated last week versus the Titans were eliminated like a long time ago.
Yeah.
So like Charbonnet or Pollard, now we think more about this.
Probably Charbonnet.
Okay. I think I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about Brian Robinson? Obviously his team doesn't need to win, but would like to win. Salary 69. His role's been frankly kind of dumb.
Yeah.
And Eckler might be back this week. They did activate him or designate him to return. I think he's going to play. His salary is 4,000. So I don't know any bad B-Rob or other B-Rob for you? Not bad. He's not bad. He's other B-Rob.
He's too good to have like this role where he just gets taken off the field for like a quarter at a time. It's absurd. And like I don't know ball like an NFL coach knows ball, but I think like were they trying to keep him fresh for the playoffs more?
No, I think they were punishing him for fumbling.
It's like it's ridiculous. So I'm not gonna play him. I just can't.
Yeah. It's tough.
He does have like breakaway ability, but he's also not the kind of guy who's gonna just rip off a 70-yard touchdown very often.
Yeah.
He'll score from like 35, but
yeah.
And I don't know if he's gonna get like 25 carries and 3 targets. So
yeah. I think I don't really want to. I didn't really use him a ton last week either. I had some, but like then his role didn't get better, so it's just not ideal. Okay. Scrolling down further, anybody in the 6,000 range calling your name here?
No, not really.
I agree with you there. So then we get down to Michael Carter 58. We get down to Kenneth Gainwell 56. If you wanted to like take a swing at him, I think he's probably important enough where they don't use him a ton. I think that's kind of why Shipley's popping up. Yeah. And then Blake Corum 55. What's your interest level in those guys? Anybody else you want to shout out in the 5,000 range?
Pretty interested in Corum and Michael Carter. Don't really want to shout out anybody else. They're just going to be rotational pieces to help be the concession for the week to get up to that extra stud receiver. And by stud, I mean like 7K receiver because I'm building so heavily around the running backs.
Yeah.
But there is an interesting case to be made, as you said, about going with like a Jalen Coker instead of a value back. Now, value backs with big workloads, we're pretty good at identifying like as a consensus. So I'm curious to see how certain value backs get projected by Sunday morning. But there is a level of like you're bogging down a lineup with a value back. You better make sure that they don't get 11 carries and 1 target.
Yeah, I think that's where I settle in as well. So I agree with you. They're losing appeal, especially now. I'm like, oh, I could just go Charbonnet. I could go Tony Pollard. Yeah. I still like Carter enough, and I like Corum enough to use them at times, but I want to make it a 15% max for either guy. I think is where I said 25 before, but I think I want to lower that a bit. I think that's where I settle in there. Okay. Receiver. Jefferson 95, Amon-Ra 9,000, Evans 89. We're going Jefferson first, the bullet of that tier, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And how much do you want to make sure you have? Like, he's a FOMO player because he's that good. On how many lineups do you want to force him into your life?
Probably 15 to 20% if I'm being optimistic.
I think that's
even
right.
That's kind of that's a little high, just due to if I'm being honest with myself and how I'm building lineups. But I can guarantee that would leave me underweight because I know people will use the extreme value backs to get there. So
yeah.
But I'd rather be underweight than full fade Justin Jefferson.
Yes, correct. Could not agree more. Let's say we get news that the Titans or the Texans are going to play their dudes, which might happen. I don't know. Would you use Nico or no?
No.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's scroll down further then. Neighbors is a toe injury. Pop back up on the injury report on Thursday.
Yeah, he had one last week too. I saw him down.
So we talked before about Brian Thomas earlier. Salary is $8,000. Is he a guy you're willing to like concede a bit at running back to get to, or is that a bridge too far?
It's not a bridge too far. It's just a matter of, can I really get it? He's got 5 straight games with double-digit targets with at least 76 yards in all of them, and he's got 5 touchdowns in that span, with a touchdown in 4 of those 5 games, and then 2 in one game. So he has multiple paths to upside, as in the yardage and the touchdowns. I don't know if I'm anticipating a lot of touchdowns from this offense, but their implied team total is not. It is sub 20, but it's not like abysmal. And they're indoors, so you could do worse.
Yeah,
I think we kind of asked this last week, but like BTJ or Tyreek.
Oh, BTJ by a mile.
Like BTJ in a game that doesn't matter. Indoors, but like Tyreek in a game that really matters. It's like, man.
Like, let's say I have 8,000. I've already got Bucky in my lineup. Got a lot of flex spot, but like I've got 8,000.
Yeah,
I'd put BTJ in there and not think twice about it. I just don't think that'll happen ever. Like if it happened, I'd do it, but I don't think it'll happen.
Correct. That's where I am.
Okay. Elsewhere in the 7,000 range, we got Devontae Adams 78, Jackson Smith and Jigba 77, Lad McConkey 76. Let's assume the Chargers are full go. I'll toss Terry in there 74 before we get to Sutton. Who in the 7,000 range is calling to your soul? Anybody?
Lad. Terry's really. Sorry, did we go the whole way to the bottom of the 7K?
Just to 74 to 74.
Terry. Terry's frustrating. It might be Lad number 1, and then I don't. Nobody else really. You said calling to me? Not really. Nobody.
Speaking to your soul.
Speaking to my soul.
Yeah.
JSN speaks to my soul, but not this week.
If the salary were a bit lower than 77, like I think they'll care about this week. This is kind of like their like playoff game. It's like I'm treating them as that's partially why I'm okay with Charbonnet, but like it is 77. There are other guys in this range I like more. So I agree with you on JSN. I might like Terry more than Lat, though. Maybe I'm a donkey, but they will care this week. Obviously, 7 targets for 5 yards is not ideal. But hey, with 7 targets and in the 3 games without Noah Brown, 23% target share, 62% of the deep targets, 25% in the red zone. And those deep targets more likely to connect when they are indoors, which they are this week at Jerry World. And I don't think this is an afternoon game, so they're not going to deal with the sun. Well, I actually don't know where the sun is at various times in Dallas. Yeah, it's a 1 p.m. Eastern game.
It is a 1 p.m. game, yeah. But...
So that's noon Central because it's Central time in Dallas, I think. So we should be okay for sun, hopefully-ish. I don't mind Terry.
Yeah. This sounds bad because like Lad's only done it twice in recent games, but because of the offense, but Terry doesn't get a lot of double-digit target games. Like, he feels a little more like an AJ Brown with like, oh wow, he got 10 targets.
AJ Brown with a better quarterback, yeah.
But like, I don't know. Lad's got 12 and 10 in 2 of his last 4. I think he's got a great red zone role. I think he's got some yardage juice if he's good. So I would lean Lad with motivation, but I don't know if we're even going to get that. So
yeah, fair enough. Okay, let's go down to the lower 7,000 range because it is a B.
This is good.
Yeah, we got Cortland Sutton 73, Jordan Addison 71, Drake London 7,000. They're all really good, right?
Yeah. No Metcalf then?
Nope.
Okay.
Addison 1?
Addison, London, Sutton, I think.
I'm like flippy floppy on London Sutton, but like I like both. And if I need to save 300 to go down to London, I'm doing that in a heartbeat, like without a second of thought.
This is like if you go with a Blake Corum, you can kind of play potentially 3 of these guys.
Yeah, that's fun.
Now your tight end's going to be a little bleak, but tight end's not great anyway.
Tight end's
And
bleak the best part, so it's fine.
We'll get there, but like you got some upside guys for sure. But you can't play the best plays at every position. So I'm going to go Addison, London, Sutton. Sutton is always interesting from a yardage and touchdown standpoint.
Yeah.
But like you pointed out, London, his role has just been good. And his chance of scoring twice is pretty immense.
The case I'd make for Sutton is that in the past 7 games, so with Marvin Mims' role slowly expanding, 26% target share, 46% deep, and 30% in the red zone. So you're getting the Drake London role with, I think, better odds of 100 yards. That might be not true. London's indoors. I think that to this point, Sutton's had the better quarterback play between the two, probably about even though between the two.
Yeah.
So I think it's a toss up. I'll take $300 savings if I need it. But I like both quite a bit.
Yeah. And you might based on how I'm building lineups. So,
okay. 6,000 range is pretty gross, I think.
Correct.
Anybody in, let's just say not Jameson, like anybody above JMO. So between 66 and 69, who stands out to you?
Not really.
I agree. I could see myself having a share of Marvin Harrison Jr. at 67.
I was going to ask about him.
Yeah, they had no motivation last week. Still had 10 targets. Kind of want to close out the rookie season on a high note. At home, indoors against another team that's quit. I think of these guys, he's the guy I'm most open to. But like, I could also be like, well, why would I go Harris when I could just add another JMO share at 65?
Yeah, that's a good point about the rookie season because he's kind of looking like
it's been a rough
wide receiver 4 among the
they just got to figure out a better way to use him. Like it's been like he's not Calvin Ridley, I don't think. Maybe he is, but like don't use him like Calvin Ridley. Maybe. I don't know. But JMO 65, genuinely good play. Adam Thielen 64 in play. DJ Moore 63. I like him. Ridley's in play. Keenan Allen 61 is in play. Don't at me. Joe McMillan 61. How are you ranking? Who's your favorite guy between JMO and McMillan?
Wait. Like inclusive?
Inclusive, yes.
GMO.
Mm-hmm. By a wide margin?
Yeah.
Okay. I think so too.
Then
like his ceiling's just too good to like say no to him. I feel like at this point, like, yeah, he scored on 2 really weird plays, but they're also getting him the ball in those weird plays.
Yeah.
Like a 2-yard rushing touchdown, that's a signal. That's not a fluke.
Yeah, he had 2 carries last week. One went for negative yards, but one was at the goal line, which is awesome.
Yeah.
He can get downfield work. He's indoors. He's the number 1 here. I'm going to go McMillan.
Okay.
That could be silly.
Why? Because the target shares for Keenan and DJ Moore?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like McMillan's doing everything with scoring.
Yeah.
DJ Moore's like DJ Moore in more of a cash game format, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
Keenan as well. What's up with Rome?
He's sick.
6. Yeah, that's what I thought.
But also, like, his target shares haven't been good since the coordinator change. If you look at the games since the coordinator change, he's like 18%. Whereas DJ Moore in that time is at 28%. Keenan's at 31%. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
Those are weird. I mean, should we go the Bears guys over McMillan then?
I think over Thielen. I'd put him above Thielen. I think they're in the same tier as McMillan. How about that?
That's fine.
Yeah.
If you're building like your best sort of lineup though, and you want, or you going McMillan doing a pure upside.
Yeah. I think so.
I wouldn't argue that, but I think those guys are interesting, and we should probably give them a little more like than we were before. So
I think that saying that they're in the same tier as McMillan is an endorsement in itself because we both like him.
Yeah.
Any Calvin Ridley, 62.
I've probably had some every week.
It's been fine.
He's fine.
Yeah.
Splash play potential. I just think I'd rather go. I mean, he's got 2 quarterbacks. That's tough.
Yeah, maybe if they have two quarterbacks in the field, one of them can complete a pass. So maybe it's not the worst thing.
Game has a 36.5 point total. I'm going to lean more no and go with those other names.
Yeah, I'd rank him below all those guys.
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm ranking Calvin Ridley below Keenan Allen in 2025. Upsetting. Okay. 6,000 and lower.
Will you get to Dobbs?
Probably. Well, no. Probably.
There's a lot of names.
Because I'd rather go DJ Moore, McMillan. Yeah, no, you're right. Probably not. Downs, 6,000. They did rule out Richardson. So no Richardson. It's going to be Flacco starting for the Colts. So down 6,000. We could put Pittman in there too at 62. Honestly, after that, it's pretty tough. We do have Pierce 58. Talked about him a bit before. Olave 58 if he plays. What speaks to you in this range? Anything?
Pierce from a pure upside standpoint is really interesting. I think if I'm going down here, you don't get too many opportunities to have like 100-yard and a touchdown upside.
Yeah.
With some level of, I'm not saying predictability, but he gets such high leverage targets and he converts on them, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think he would stand out to me over some of these other names.
Yeah. Okay.
Like even a motivated like Quentin Johnston, for example.
Yeah.
Have you seen enough from Zacchaeus?
Yeah. I used him last week a bit, which is nice. And I think the key thing is that he's playing well.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of enticing.
They've needed a second receiver for a long time.
Yeah. Now, for the first time in 2 weeks, it's not a revenge game for Lamine Zacchaeus because he played the Eagles and the Falcons, and he did well against both of them. Has not, to my knowledge, played for the Cowboys, so he's got one more NFC East team to complete the gauntlet there. But in the 3 games without Noah Brown, even the game where De'Ami Brown is playing ahead of him, Zacchaeus has a 21% target share, 15% deep, 19% in the red zone. So it's a lot of like short stuff, but like it's fine. So if I had more Jaden, I'd probably wind up with more Zacchaeus. But Jaden, by being fourth, is probably going to be like 15, 10% for me. So that pushes him down a bit.
Yeah. I think he's interesting for those stacks. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to get there.
Yep. Okay. Down further, Deontay Johnson makes his Texans debut. I'm sure we're all thrilled about that and waiting with bated breath. Marvin Mims, 56. Let's talk about him briefly.
Yes.
Only a 47% snap rate each of the past 2 weeks, but he's a baller. Like he saved their season last week.
Yeah.
They lost, but like he tried to save their season last week.
Yeah.
Couple of touchdowns there. It's still not a great role, but they're getting him creative touches, rush attempts. He returns kicks or returns punts. That's not nothing. So I would have a non-zero number of Mims lineups, I think, this week. What about you?
Yeah. Now, he got 8 targets last week, caught all 8 for 103 yards, which might sound like he had a bunch of downfield heaves. He had 2 downfield targets, according to my data. His ADOT was 7.6 yards. So, like, there's a lot of bust potential here, and there's a chance that his performance last week expanded his role. But if you really like dig into what the Broncos have been doing, is Courtland Sutton will play about 90% of the snaps and get his usual workload, and then everyone else kind of rotates in, maybe gets between 35 and like 60% of the snaps. If you think that his role is the same as it was, I would say I'd rather not.
Yeah.
If you think that this bumped him up at all, then sure.
Okay.
That's the best I got. So
okay.
We did talk about this, and you think his role might stay the same, maybe increase by a smidge.
Yeah.
But the role itself is not as good as the result was last week.
No, but he's been doing this for a bit now, where they've been giving him work. He's been capitalizing on that. And I think that does matter. Like his role has expanded a bit throughout the year.
Yes, it's slightly getting better, but based on like every other Broncos receiver, there's no indication that like, oh, he's going to just play, 80% of the snaps and get a 25% target share. So I would rather go with Mims as we're scrolling through here than anybody.
Yeah.
Between what? Like, we're okay with Zacchaeus in certain situations.
Pierce.
Pierce.
Mims or Pierce?
Pierce.
Okay.
Pierce is indoors, and I feel like he's earned targets.
Ever since he said the 22% route rate, or 22% target per route rate thing, that's stuck in my brain.
Yeah.
That's a big change for him.
It is.
Okay. I think I agree with you because of that. So you talked me into him as well.
But outside of Pierce, like as you scroll through here, it's kind of Mims.
Yep. And then I think it's Coker and Leggett. Right?
Yes.
And it's kind of like we said before, where I prefer Coker, but if I have too much, I'm happy to take out some, put in Leggett for $100 more instead. So like if I am looking at my exposures at 11:30 Central on Sunday, and I'm like, oh man, I had too much Coker, I'm going to scale that back, put in some Leggett instead.
Yeah. So Thankfully we've got a 7K range, more in the 6K than I thought as we scrolled through, which is nice because that's going to help build around those running backs.
Yep. Your loves at receiver.
I want to say Addison, London, and Jamison Williams.
Yep. Addison, JMO for me are locked in. London is a consideration. Sutton's a consideration. Growing more fond of Pierce. McMillan. I think it's 2 firm loves and then some like considerations between London, Pierce, McMillan. We also didn't do loves at running back. We love Bucky and we love Gibbs. Who's your third?
I'd like for it to be Bijan, but I know that it can't really be the case. So probably Aaron Jones. Although, as I say that, I kind of feel like Charbonnet is more locked into like a great role than Jones, who might still be somewhat limited.
It's Charbonnet or Jones for me, I think, for that third slot between those two. Yep. Okay. Tight end stinks. George Kittle should not play, has a backup quarterback, $76. Trey McBride is playing Fred Warner. I assume will play, therefore cannot use him. That's the rule. Also, he got earholed by Kyler last week. Seems bad. Bauer 73 is what he is. I just can't justify 73 on a slate where I need salary so much to get to Bucky and Gibbs. Kelsey's not going to play. Jonnu is a bad quarterback. So to me, I'm probably not going to use a tight end above 6,000. What about you?
I agree. Okay. I think Bowers is interesting just due to the fact that
he is the most interesting. Yes.
The people probably can't get there very often.
Yeah.
And now he can just create more space on these rookie records. I guess technically he could still be caught for the most rookie receptions, right?
By any player this year?
Yeah.
Which is weird because he missed 2 games, but yeah.
I know. So maybe there's like that angle. Maybe they just pepper Brock Bowers, but as a priority, I can't quite get there. He hasn't scored very much, but that's also because the team's not very good.
True.
So I'm going Laporta. He's going to be like my highest exposure tight end in the game of the week. With he's at home, indoors, pretty much checks all the boxes.
Yeah,
role is much improved from where it was early in the year. So I'm there with Laporta, number 1.
We talked about this a bit in passing, but we like Goff's up there, Gibbs is up there, JMO's up there. Are you okay having all 4 of those guys with Laporta in your like primary lineup?
So Goff, Gibbs, Jameson, and Laporta?
Yeah.
That's asking a lot, but I am building lineups and I kind of am trending toward that direction. I'm also okay to shift to TJ Hawkinson instead, although I do much prefer Laporta.
Yeah.
I don't mind Hawkinson enough. He has not scored yet this year. That will have to change eventually.
The new McBride.
Yeah. So
TJ McHawkinson? Does it work?
It works enough. Okay. But I'm going Laporta and Hawkinson. I'm just going to say it. They're my 2 loves.
Yeah,
and I'm going to complicate it from there. And I'm going to have a lot of them. I don't really know how many other tight ends I want to get to. This is going to be a great week, though, for optimizers, just identifying a tight end at 42 and projecting him for 5.9 points and say, like, oh, he's a great value play.
Yeah.
Are there any? I mean, we can go through the rest. The typical.
I took notes on only one other tight end.
Other than these two?
Yeah.
Who is it?
I'm not telling you. I'm embarrassed.
You legally have to tell me.
Can everyone else who's listening like do some earmuffs quick? So you can't, if you have earbuds in, take the earbuds out, then earmuffs. I took notes on Zach Ertz at 54. Like, that's how bad tight end is.
He was popping in optimizers last week.
Was he?
And,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Last week, that's fine.
I haven't. Yeah.
But like, he's had 60 plus yards 4 times this year. So like, my aversion to him has always been yardage. He's had yardage. So it's like, they probably want to win. Got a really good quarterback. You know, I've played worse. Like, that's not a great justification for a play, but I have played a lot worse than Zach Ertz, especially in a slate where like tight end's abysmal.
You aren't betting against a lot of
correct
20-point upside guys.
Yep.
In great spots.
Yep.
So if Ertz gets you 11 and nobody else scores more than like 17, you're fine.
Let's say that we get a Shefty bomb 11:52 Saturday night, saying that Kate Otten. What?
None of that mattered.
That's how it mattered. 11:52 Saturday night, saying Kate Otten's going to play, despite being listed questionable. Would you use him with Baker, or just use him as a standalone play 52 or no?
I think I'd use him only with Baker.
Yeah. I'm kind of like in that same area, I guess. I might be more okay with him than that, just because, like, again, it's a high motivation spot, high implied total, good quarterback. He's earned targets in the past. I would need the Shefty bomb that night. It's not like Kate Otten is active at 11:30 Eastern on Sunday. I need a Shefty bomb to get there, but I'd consider it at least.
So nobody else jumped out to you. Nobody else really jumps out to me.
I got nothing else, frankly.
What's your overall stance on punting tight end on a week like this with, I don't know. I don't even know which backup might be in a good, like, technically good spot. But you're going to see them if you look at projections and optimizers. Yeah.
I think that when we look at this, like, our process at tight end is use guys tied to our quarterbacks and high implied team totals. We have 2 players who check those boxes with non-terrible salaries who get a 17% target share or higher in their relevant samples. I'd rather just use Hawkinson and Laporta in every lineup than pivot down lower, personally.
Well, yeah, I mean, best implied team totals are the Lions, so that's Laporta. Bucks.
I'm not using Kyle Pitts. Stop it.
Okay.
Stop it.
That's what I was getting to. I was just
you were laughing. I could tell. I knew you were going to do. Stop it. Okay, defense. Loves a tight end or Hawkinson, Laporta, right?
Yeah, let's move on.
Cool. I will use the Patriots defense at 33.
Would you use the Giants?
I thought about it. No, but I thought about it.
No? Okay.
I just
they looked amazing last week, but no, they didn't. But
hey,
their team did.
Just win, baby. Patriots, though, at home, facing the Bills, resting up for the playoffs. Patriots have still, like, I know last week was bad, but like in general, they played okay. Like, they've played hard enough, hardish. Kept it close to the Bills in the first matchup a couple weeks ago. I don't hate the Patriots at 33. They're probably my favorite team. If the Chargers were to sit guys, that's the late window. So, we would know Sunday morning.
We'd know Saturday, yeah.
I'd consider the Raiders at 33 as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Titans 36 if it's Davis Mills. Yes.
Titans were kind of the first place that I was like, okay, let me just, I don't want to play the cheaper ones, although I'm not against the Patriots or anything.
Yeah.
Titans were kind of jumping out to me though as well.
I would say the same about the Cardinals at 37, given that the Niners are so banged up, backup quarterback out there. That's pretty good for them at 37. Don't mind that. I don't feel the need to go above that personally for this week.
So then no motivated defenses specifically, but
Nope.
Did you say Seattle or did you stop it? Where'd you stop it?
Seattle, I'd like if I had 39, I'd put him in there, but I don't see that happening.
Okay. Yeah, I think you got enough options. And while there is value, I'd rather save salary on a defense against a second string unit than
same.
Play a defense at 45.
Titans and Patriots are my top two. I'd put Raiders in the top two if Herbert sits for that one as well. Okay, we have talked through the entire slate, Brandon. Any final thoughts for you on Week 18?
I think there's a way to build a lot of stacks to the games and offenses we want without forcing too many bad plays. Mm-hmm. Just be receptive to news, reports, etc. It's ultimately up to you to make final decisions on how much you trust certain reports. But I'll say this much. As of Friday afternoon, I don't need breaking news to build a lineup I like, and that feels really reassuring.
I could not agree more with that. And like you said before, write down the plays you want to use, react without overreacting, and make sure you're properly valuing the news and don't ignore the good plays as a result of late breaking news on Sunday. That is all that we have here for today and for the regular season, but as mentioned, back with you throughout the playoffs as well, every Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern on the FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page, also up on the FanDuel Research Podcast feed. Also, next week, Tuesday, PGA Show is back. That is just on the podcast feed, audio-only show for that, so subscribe to the FanDuel Research Podcast feed there, but also check out our betting shows covering the spread on the YouTube page. Subscribe there and turn on notifications to get notified as we go live throughout the week. Brandon, if people have questions for you on the socials, where can they find you there?
I'm on X at Gdula13, GDULA13, and Blue Sky at Gdula.
I am on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can also find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work on the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Enjoy Week 18. Enjoy the final week of the regular season. Playoffs are just around the corner. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been The Heat Check, a FanDuel Research podcast.